Okay, we are live. This is Willie Jones, and you've tuned in. No, it's not Wednesday at 12 to 1. This is Friday. We had some technical issues on Wednesday with the Working Woman Report, and we rescheduled our conversation with the dynamic Miss Deidre Alexander for today, Friday. And so we hope you have your brown bag lunch ready for you today. I'm a little hungry too, but I'm going to try to wait and get me a little Chick-fil-A afterwards. But we're so glad that you're sitting with us in this conversation, and we'll continue to share it later also. And also make sure that we continue to share this over the next couple of days. I know this is a different time for many of you, but this is just going to be a wonderful conversation. We want you to share it with your friends. I want to remind you that we are, of course, live here every Wednesday from 12 to 1 with the Working Woman Report. And every time we go live, you can go to our page, womenforprogressradio.com, womenforprogressradio.com, and you can get our conversation live there also. Also, I want to share with you a little tip. If you download the podcast app, it's called the Podcast app, and you can get it on Android or Apple. And you can also download that if you put in the Working Woman Report or Women for Progress Radio. Our archive shows are there too. The audio version is there, and you can listen in also on some of our podcast shows. And of course, anywhere you get your podcast, Spreaker Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, we're also available there. Just put in the Working Woman Report or Women for Progress Radio show, and some of our shows are there too. And also, what I love about the podcast app, you can also set us as your favorite, and every single time we go live, you'll get a notification that we're there and we're live. And so we want you to continue to get the great information of the programming through Women for Progress Radio Network. This year we celebrate Women for Progress Radio Network of 12 years of service to our community. And I think we are the only African American women of color organization that has not only created a radio network, but also hosted and produced by women of color. So we're so glad, and we appreciate your ongoing support. If you want to know about all the particular radio programming and podcasts available through Women for Progress Radio Network, go to our website at womenforprogressradio.com, womenforprogressradio.com, and there's a lineup there. Also, now one great show that we just launched and we're so very excited about is an upcoming program Monday at 6:30, live right here on our Facebook page. It's Legally Speaking, and this will be hosted by attorney Phaedra Robinson, one of the most incredible women that I've ever met. And she's going to be the lead anchor for our ongoing weekly program called Legally Speaking. And women, you want to tune in, because what these women from all types of areas of law will be talking about, giving you tips, giving you an understanding of what the law is, what the law says, some protections for you, everything legal. So you want to tune in every single week. At Mondays at 6:30, you can get live. And on Monday, attorney Phaedra Robinson will have one of the most incredible legal champions in the state of Mississippi, Miss Lisa Ross, attorney Lisa Ross. I call her a legal community champion, because we love her courage, we love the information she provides, and we love how she empowers women to be strong and know what your rights and things are. So join them Monday at 6:30. Attorney Phaedra Robinson is the lead anchor for that program, but she's going to be talking to a wealth of legal eagles throughout the state of Mississippi on various issues as we go along. Now, the programming starting out is going to be a half hour, so you want to get right in, make sure that you listen in, sure you tune in and share that program, because you're going to walk away with what I call news that you can use. And so that's Monday at 6:30, and the name of the podcast is called Legally Speaking. and the anchor host is the incredible attorney Phaedra Robinson. So thank you all so much. Now let's get started. Today I have with me a very exciting guest with me, Miss Deirdre Robinson, and I think I misplaced her bio, but the great thing about technology, if it's charged up, it's always good. So I want to share her resume with you, and the incredible work that she is doing and has done. If my phone comes up. There it is. Okay. Ms. Deirdre Alexander is a native of Jackson, Mississippi. She holds a master's in public school administration from Columbia University's Teachers College and a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from Jackson State University. She is currently a PhD student at the University of Mississippi, where she is researching the impact and preparation of Black women educators into K-12 education. I'm going to repeat that. Where she is researching the impact and preparation of Black women educators in K-12 education. Deirdre also serves as an instructional assistant at Columbia University, a former fellow for the Handbook Policy Institute for Research on Teachers of Color, and is a senior leadership fellow with Higher Heights, a national political leadership fund to harness Black women's power and leadership potential. Welcome back again, Ms. Deirdre.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Willie.
And I don't think this is your first rodeo here at Women for Progress Radio.
No, I love Women for. I've never been on the show, but I've watched you do the show. I've been to the studio there and watched you do it with other people. Okay. And I'm a proud member of Women for Progress, so I'm excited.
Great, wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. And I've been excited about this conversation, and it's long overdue. And your work is very innovative work. I mean, you have a real focus. I've never, and I talk to women's organizations and entities that are doing things around supporting teachers, but you have a unique passion for this work, and that's what we want to talk about today. Now, you're a Mississippi girl, right, Deirdre?
Yes, ma'am. I was born and raised in Jackson. I went to Poindexter Elementary School on Robinson Road, and then I went to Powell Middle School. Then I went to Provine. Then I went to Jackson State. So I've been here my entire life. I'm a real, true Mississippi girl. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
And what does that mean to you, being a Mississippi girl, being part of the Mississippi soul?
To be honest with you, I don't think I really appreciated it until I went to graduate school at Columbia. Just being with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, and everybody was kind of championing, where they came from, and pushing the issues where they came from, and I just began to see the value and how much work we needed to do in this state. And so that really got me interested in the research side and the policy side of education, going through that program. And so just being here, I remember when I applied for the program, I put in my personal statement, I'm going to come back to Mississippi and do the work here, because I really believe as a millennial, millennials leave our state, but I believe if we want our state to be better, we have to do whatever in our power, in our field, to make it better. And so education is my field. It's my thing. So it's what I'm passionate about. So that's what I'm going to use to kind of push to move our state forward. I think just being from Mississippi, it just means, family, soulful. It means being passionate about your state, loving where you come from. And when you go out and leave and go to other places, representing us well. So that's what that means to me.
Yeah, I had a issue with my tire the other day, so I had to catch an Uber or a Lyft, and I was talking to the driver, and I was sharing with him about being a Southern girl. I've lived in a lot of different places, Los Angeles and Michigan and other places, and I've never lost the connection to the Mississippi soul. I tell them even now when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is open back the curtains so I can see the sunshine and the trees and all that, And I love
do it every morning.
And they say they call it now patios, but back in the day in my country girl days they call it a porch. And I love even sitting out on my porch, which is now the patio. And especially on rainy days, to sit out there and relax and really think about how great God is good for us. So I'm always excited to talk to another Mississippi girl. So let's get into this thing about teaching. Why did you choose teaching in education specifically?
Well, I come from a family of educators. My mom was a teacher for 35 years, I believe. My aunts were teachers, and my grandparents really pushed education. They made sure that, if you wanted to, they made sure that my aunts and uncles had the opportunity to go to college. And so that was something big that my grandfather really, really pushed. And just coming from a family of educators. Oh, and also my grandparents, back then, they tried to educate themselves. So they went to, I think Jackson Business College. I don't know if it exists anymore, but they really, they really believed that education was the key to, in bettering yourself. So when I saw my family going all into education, I decided to do it as well. And so initially I wanted to get into political science, but I changed my major to elementary education at Jackson State. And I was 22 years old, entering my first teaching experience at Brown Elementary School in Midtown, which is now closed. But that changed my entire life. I spent 8 years teaching there. And I worked there, for so long. And I just being around just all those Black children every day and just Mississippi kids, and just being around a mostly Black women, coming together as this community to educate these kids, and doing whatever we could, with little resources, a dilapidated building, we didn't have much, but what we had was joy, happiness, we had community, we had passion to do what was best for those kids. And so, that kind of just fueled the passion in me to just continue it, because I only was going to do it for three years, Miss Will. And I said, I'm going to do 3 years and I'm going to do something. But I ended up staying there for 8 years. Wow. And I continued my education journey. And so I always say that wherever I go, whether to DC, whether to anywhere to talk, to talk to different people, I'm always going to carry that school and those children with me in every room that I go in. Because I believe, that's who we're fighting for every day. And so that's how I got in it, and that's how I stayed in it.
And, too, in your focus around Black teachers of color, let's be honest. I think about our founder, Miss Dorothy Stewart Samuel, who was this phenomenal educator. And I still, even though Miss Stewart has passed away, I even still bump into people who say, "Oh, I'm so glad about you all continue to work with Women for Progress." So, because Miss Dorothy Stewart Samuel was my teacher, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had the life that I had. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had the family that I have. I wouldn't be the person that I am if it wasn't for her. So when we were growing up, teachers were this tremendous life force, and there was something about teachers of color specifically that empowered us, that connected the family, connected the community. So when we talk about, I want to talk about your nonprofit too, which says Women Educators of Color, that you have specifically pulled together in your work around women educators of color. Tell us about what they bring to the table.
Okay, I want to speak to that because you said something really important, how back then teachers were revered, but after desegregation, a lot of people don't know, a lot of our Black women teachers, they were out of the job because when we integrated, people didn't want Black women or Black people teaching their kids. So, and then the Black administrators, the Black principals that we had in our communities, they lost their jobs because of integration. And so ever since then, Black teachers have been on the decline. And the research that I'm doing is showing that just all the, things that I'm reading was that back then in like the 50s and the 60s, Black teachers were really revered in their communities. They were seen as community leaders. Mm-hmm. They were seen as somebody you respect. But now we're seeing that it's not really like that anymore. And there's like a disconnect between Black students and Black teachers. And, you know, it's just a lot. It's really a lot that I'm learning. And so when I wanted to focus on Black women educators, because just working, I see what we go through mentally and physically to teach children. Even in our teacher preparation programs, I'm learning that in predominantly white institutions in their teacher preparation programs, a lot of Black women are saying in my research that they feel marginalized. They feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like they're being isolated, even in their programs. And they said when they leave and go into the classroom, because Black women choose to go into the most underserved communities. Most of us do. We go into, because most Black women go into teaching, we go in it because we want to educate Black students. We go in it because we want to make our community better. But what's happening is when we get into the classroom, our preparation programs have not prepared us for those communities. And that's why a lot of Black women are leaving the profession. And it's like right now, I think Black women educators are the lowest we've ever been. That we're not going into the profession and we're leaving the profession. And a lot of this is because I remember working at the school I worked at a while ago, was that I would have students whose parents were just murdered. I would have students whose parents were on drugs or didn't have food to eat. And you take that on in those communities as teachers, we take that on. And we have something that you would call secondhand trauma, secondhand stress, just from working, just doing that day in and day out and working long hours. You know, when you work in communities like that, your day does not begin at 7 and end at 3. Right. You know, I remember I would be at work from 7 to 6 at night when it was dark, you know, and then get up the next day and do it all over again. And sometimes I think back and I say, how did I do that? I don't even know where I got the strength to do that. But Black women are doing that every single day. And so that's when I decided, you know, we have to start something to build up these women, because if we don't, we're going to lose that. Mm-hmm. And all the research shows for years that if a Black student has a Black teacher, they're this more likely to go to college. They're this more likely to graduate high school. Mm. And so if we have those statistics and we have those, like, why aren't we pouring into, in particular, Black women? Because Black women we make up, when it comes to Black men, like when it comes to Black men, Black women we go into the profession way more, like, especially in the South. The South is heavily populated, especially underserved schools with Black women. Mm. So why aren't we pouring into those women? Why aren't we researching? Why aren't we trying to build up those women to go into those spaces? Because in the end, you know, that's how we're going to build up our community. That's how we're going to build up our schools. And so that's why I started this, because I myself experienced it. I myself have experienced, you know, being in a predominantly white space, and they're not understanding, you know, the connection that we have with Black students, or they're not understanding the way our culture is and how we talk to each other or how we learn, you know, different, because we're all different. And so just having those experiences, I said, no, Black women in education, we need a safe place where we can talk about it and we can build up each other. So that's initially why, and I can talk about this all day. So please stop me, Ms. Willie, because as you can see.
Well, I want to go back and ask the question that state a couple of things that you stated, because one of the exciting things about us having this conversation today, and even you launching and putting together Women Educators of Color, the organization, is that we from our community, and even when I say community, I'm talking about even communities of color, but even communities that are not of color, we don't understand. We know that there's been a disconnect in our public school system, and a lot of it we put on that burden on the backs of our teachers. And a lot of us parents, all we see is that we got a problem. We got a problem in the classroom. We have a problem with class management. We have a problem with our kids excelling. We have some real issues. And all we want to do is we can point to the person who's standing in the front of the classroom. but we're not understanding the history that has evolved over the years that have put us all in this situation together. It's not just a teacher thing. This is also impacted our children. But we, as a community, you are helping us understand and connect the dots. Say, oh, our kids show up every day, and their parent passed away last week. Our children showed up today, and they didn't get a meal last night before they went to bed. And we can say all day long, oh, well, that's not our problem. That's not the teacher's problem. That's not the problem that we have to deal with. But if a teacher is faced with even 10 people in her class that's going through some type of traumatic issue, she has to deal with it. If she's going to be able to take that information and relate to those individuals, she's got to first get that child's mind together where he or she can even absorb that information. So, so we have to understand that teachers of color have a obstacles that they have to jump over that many do not. And we need to make sure that people understand that. And when we're talking about fully funding education, and I'm not even going to apologize for bringing this up. When we're talking about fully funding education, a lot of what we're talking about is take care of that issue, at least so that teacher does not have to be concerned about that. Not having enough books, not having enough this, not having enough computers or iPads or whatever the child needs. At least that gives her some relief. And then when we talk about increasing wages, if you increase the wages of our teachers and make sure that we make them priority again, that relieves that pressure off teachers also. So I just wanted to just kind of stick a pin in that, because I want people to connect the dots to where we are. And look, and I know I talk to parents all the time, and we're so concerned about, especially I think one of the things that has uncovered during COVID, because now we are sitting in the footsteps of our teachers, and we know what it feels like with our own. Okay, we might have one or two. She has 26 or 30 in the class every day. Yeah. But, I had a parent say to me during COVID, I can't even get my kid to sit down and listen to me. And I'm her parent. Can you imagine what teachers are going through? And not that child was a bad child or was disrespecting her. It's because how do you refocus that attention? We're not qualified to do that. How do you help her in her little space that she is? Many of these teachers are classroom managing for the entire room. We just have this little cubby hole in the corner where our little girl or little boy sit, and we can't even manage that space. So you can imagine. So I want to make sure that parents are very concerned. They do love our teachers. They want to support our teachers, but before they can do that, they really want to understand what's going on. And I still don't think we know yet what is happening in our school system. So I want to talk a little bit more about that, the challenges around classroom regarding, you talked about these trauma issues. How does teachers manage that? A lot of teachers are walking away, and you can understand it. Talk a little bit more about that. Share with us about that.
Really, you just take it day by day. You have students and you can't blame the child because they're experiencing things that children should not experience. I know I've had students who experience things that I can never even imagine as an adult experiencing. So what happens is, you kind of work with the counselor the best you can, but they're overloaded with things. And then you as a teacher, you're overloaded because now you have to get the child to be proficient on this assessment, and you have to, attend to their social and emotional needs. And so a lot of it is that, especially in underserved schools and underfunded schools, in urban and rural communities, we don't have the resources to help students with those things. So a lot of times you either try to, you have to be the parent, you have to be the guardian, you have to be the social worker, you have to be the counselor for that child. You have to go through all these things just so that child can learn. all these barriers just so they can learn, their ABCs, what to, and and I taught kindergarten for a couple of years, and kindergarten is not kindergarten we went like it is anymore. Yeah. Kindergarten is like, you need to know how to read when you come out, write a sentence so it's not the same. And so you're doing all of these things and you have to get through all of these barriers. And I don't think people understand that, especially in Black communities. I want to make sure I say that, because those are where most of our Black women teachers are. And in those, especially, and so in those communities, we have to deal with all of those things. And we're having students who are coming to school who, they never held a pencil. They've never written their name before. And in other affluent communities, they know how to do that when they come in. Mm-hmm. We're actually teaching these kids, okay, this is how you hold your pencil. This is how you do this. And it's not to blame the parents, Miss Willie, because in those communities, and, and I went to Poindexter, parents are having to deal with, they have to work 2 to 3 jobs. They're trying to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. They're trying to do the best they can. And so they don't have the time nor the energy to do that for their child. They're trying to put food on the table. They're trying to put clothes on their back. So I'm not in any way blaming the parent. I just want people to understand all of the things that we have to deal, that women who go into those spaces have to deal with in order to teach those kids. And it's not to say, oh, woe is me, or feel sorry. No, it's like, we need resources. We need policy that is, in this particular design for people in those spaces. We need resources for just people in those spaces. And so, go ahead.
And I, this is so important. And before we move to needs, I want to talk about how part of this conversation is how we innovatively support teachers. And I use that word innovatively because it's not just about giving them, some discretionary funds to buy prizes that they can use for teacher games or those kind of things. We have to look at how we support teachers in this age very strategically, so that the support that we provide to teaching is extremely impactful. I want to underline that word, extremely impactful. Not light impactful, not a little impactful, not, okay, we'll do a little bit there to say that we contributed to this particular effort. We're talking about extremely impactful. And I want to talk about that because and talk about different supports. I mean, specifically, you designed Women Educators of Color organization, of course, to train and prepare teachers. So what is unique about your program under WEOC that you have put in place, that you have created this training and preparation process for teachers of color? What is unique about that program?
Okay, so for one, I looked and searched, all on the internet. This was the first conference ever for Black women, for women of color educators, and particularly for them. And because of COVID, we had to kind of had to put a halt on it, but I do want to start it back up in 2022. But it gave the women a space to connect with other. Because I got a lot of going things in with my mind. So one thing was that Black women teachers sometimes we don't have the ability to move up in our profession. Mm-hmm. And the research that I've shown, sometimes they want to pigeonhole us to a certain place because they want us to take care of discipline. They want us to kind of be, this caricature almost, to like you just make sure the kids are behaving, and we don't have those opportunities to move up in our profession. And so it gave the women the opportunity to connect with other Black women in higher education who were professors, who were administrators, who were superintendents, so they can find a mentor for them. That was one thing, because a lot of the women expressed, and in my research, we don't have good quality mentors. You can't find them. Another thing was professional development that was geared specifically for the environments that they were working in. So that means that if I can't go to professional, because it's different. working in an affluent community because they have different issues. Not saying they don't have them. So if I have a child who has this behavior issue, I need to work with students who I need professional development around children who have to deal with gun violence. Mm-hmm. I need professional development around children whose parents are on, are on drugs and all these other things. I need professional development around trauma. Like, those are things that I need to work in to do what I need to do. And so I think now we're slowly seeing that. But for the most part, it's really not that popular. It's really popular in the North. But we're slowly seeing that in the Southeast. And so those are things that we need. The third thing was, we needed help. I focused on was teachers needing being connected to education, research, advocacy, and policy. A lot of I worked in policy for a minute, and I can tell you, when you go into those spaces, you don't see a lot of Black women. There are a lot of white women, a lot of white males, but for the most part, you don't see a lot of us. So when they're making those policies and they're coming up with these ideas, we're not even at the table. Right. And we all know those policies are going to affect our urban and rural communities the most. Right. So that was the third thing I wanted to get, if you're Black women who wanted to get into, who are interested in that, a space to connect with somebody who's in that space or learn more about it. Because I know a lot of people reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I want to get policy, but I don't even know how to get into that. It's because we don't have the access. I'm a girl from, West Jackson. I didn't know anybody in policy, not a soul. And so we don't have those connections. So that was another thing that the conference was for, was connecting Black women to people in those spaces. So if they chose to, they could have a mentor that could help them get into that.
Well, that's great. And you've hit all the right buttons. And mm-hmm. then I want to move this conversation before we go any further too, and we'll add some more down the end, is mm-hmm. how can we create these support systems for women? Of course, we can support women educators of color, and I'm sure we're going to talk about how you can do that. But when you hit these buttons, is professional development, research and advocacy, and things around policy, making sure that our teachers are at the table. And I'm going to say this, and somebody's going to slap my hand, but okay, this is Women for Progress radio show, nobody else's show. And a lot of times we find that when we reach out to talk to teachers about mm-hmm. what's going on in the public school system and what's going on in that classroom, we get mm-hmm. pushback. We can't get anybody mm-hmm. scheduled. We got to get 3 or 4 permission letters. And sometimes I feel like our teachers' voices are being muddled and being closed to be able to share with us as a community. I mean, this conversation that you and I are having today, I can't tell you that I've been in a conversation like this before, where we're getting this not only historic information, but even dealing with the challenges that teachers are having in a very intimate, in a very individual way. And we need to have, so when we reach out as an organization to talk to teachers, yes, we'll talk to them in our spaces, in our lunch and learns, in our round tables off camera. But when we're asked to actually have that public conversation, and so that teachers can be honest and can teach, not that they're dishonest, but they can be publicly honest, I think sometimes that there's been some obstacles there. So I'm going to say that and put that out there. So as we begin to talk, that we allow teachers, and when you talk about policy, that's another area where our teachers, we need them to be heard. Now, they have a lot of teachers associations and teachers organizations, and we hear from that organization as a group. But we want to hear from, just like they say, from the mouths of babes, we want to hear from the mouths of teachers what they're experiencing, because there's nothing like them telling their own story and sharing with us. And they don't have, it's not necessary to be in a negative way. When you're sharing truth and speaking truth, then that's what we want to hear. That's what's going to touch our hearts, and that's what's going to touch our minds. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to hear voices like that. So when we talk about professional development, how can organizations and all of these things that you think that we as a community can do to support our teachers, even going back and trying to figure out ways we can elevate those teachers back to the levels that they were like when I was in school and others were in school. So talk to us about how we as a community, how we as women, how we as an organizations, churches throughout everywhere can really contribute to this in a very meaningful and very impactful and very extremely strategic way.
I think that's a great question. And I think, a couple things. I think the first thing was that I don't know where the trust was lost between parents and educators, parents and teachers, but that needs to be reconnected, especially in our Black communities, because we tried to get away from the community aspect of schools. We had community schools where you walked to school that was in your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But now, because of, different charter schools and things like that and private schools and people just and going to like specialty schools, and we don't really have that community school anymore where, you went to school in your neighborhood and your teacher lived down the street and she knew your mom and your family. We've kind of gotten away from that a little bit. And that's something that is very interesting to me because I believe that one thing we did, Miss Willie, I'm going to tell the truth. I might get my hand popped here, but I think that when educated Black people start to leave their communities and say, well, I want to go somewhere that's safer. I want to go over here. I think we took the value out of those schools. I think that if, for example, if I were to say, I'm going to stay in this community, I'm a college educator. I have my children here, and I'm going to have my children go to this school right here. That is an underserved school, but me as an advocate, if I'm in the know and I'm an advocate for that school, though the other kids are going to benefit from that. And I think that's one of the things that we did. We took ourselves, we went to other communities, and that's one thing. And we lost the community in our community schools. Another thing is that I believe that we just have to value teachers more. And you said something that, and I think is by design, the silencing of teachers. Mm-hmm. That's just not by happenstance. I believe that's by like people try to silence the voices of teachers who are really in those, communities. We try to make it seem like, everything is great. And, they're working hardworking teachers, and they give teachers claps, but you don't listen to them. You don't pay them, and that's another reason why a lot of Black women are leaving the profession. It's not enough money. You can't take care of your family on that, especially in community today where Black women are, the sole providers of their families. You can't live off that. And so I think that's another issue. Another thing is that I really believe that we have to rally behind our struggling schools. We just cannot revere one or two good schools that's in the district. No, we have to get behind the school that's failing. Mm-hmm. As a community, we have to say, okay, what's going on at this school? Like, what do you guys need us to do? Like, how can we help you guys? And I think it's going to take all of our community leaders. I remember when I went to Poindexter, we were adopted by the mayor's office. The mayor's office adopted our school, and people were always at our school helping us. And Poindexter is right over here in a community where it's not the best, but we had back then, we had resources. We had people pouring into that school. Mm-hmm. And I remember the mayor coming to our school often. I remember community leaders coming to our school, taking us places, showing us different things or different possibilities. And I think that's what we have to get to, because sometimes when it comes to our Black students, sometimes they don't even have the vision of where they can go because they've never seen it. And if a Miss Willie comes to a school and say, hey, I own my own trucking company, they'll be like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what is that? Like, how?
Yeah.
What do you mean? That would change a life.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I took some students from Brown to, there was this black tech company downtown. I don't know if it still exists, but I took a few students down there. They were building apps and all that stuff. And the students left there and they were just like, oh my, like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I was like, what's an entrepreneur? But they heard that word for the first time and they saw the possibilities. And I think that's what our students need. We need to rally behind, just adopt a school here and there and say, okay, we want to show students the possibility. Mm-hmm. We want to plant the seed of a dream and a vision in them, because you cannot be what you have never seen or what you never heard of. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's this big grand theme. It's really, I think it's just little things that we can do to build up and help our community. So I hope I answered your question.
You did. And when I use the word extreme and impactful and all those kind of things, all of those opportunities, one of the things that we're working on, not only through my nonprofit Dependable Source Corp Workforce Development Center and DSE Training Academy, our truck driver training school, but I want to do more career exploration for kids and for young girls. I think I'm really pushing the young girls piece, because when we talk about non-traditional jobs, and look, and I've stopped apologizing too to getting on this stump about non-traditional careers. Because when I think about I talk about trucking and construction and IT, but there's so many other engineering. Women can become their own contractors. There's just electricians. Oh my gosh. We have Tony Hicks, who is a native of Meridian, Mississippi, who is doing phenomenal things in the state of Georgia. She's getting ready to launch her business international, or has already launched her business international. But she's an electrical contractor. I mean, how many African American women or women do you know of a color that are doing that? Right here in our state, Miss Vera Hall owns her own construction company. So Innovative Performance, and she has shared stories where she walked into rooms and did a blowout conversation and laid out a plan from a building from the beginning to the end and everything in between, and then they still ask her afterwards, so who you work for? Those are the kind of things I want to do. I think we need to do, and I call it career exploration, because what we want to do is share that information so that children very young know what the possibilities are.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. It has to start when they're young, because that's when you really plant the seed, and that's when they start to take school seriously, because they see the possibilities. And by the time they're in middle school, children in that community has lived so much life and experienced so many things. It's like they can be overshadowed by all of that. So I believe that it starts young, before they get into things they shouldn't get into, because sometimes these kids are getting into things when they're in elementary school, and I don't think we talk about that. We got to be truthful, and I'm glad you said that. But I want to make it clear is that all of this, I think somebody said that teachers are fearful of losing their jobs if they speak out, and that's true. But we're all supposed to be I believe if you tell the truth about what's going on, we can fix the real problem. But as long as we keep pretending like everything is okay, and that's why I particularly targeted Black women in education, because we're the ones who are in front of those students every day. We're the ones in those urban and rural communities. And so why isn't anybody pouring into us?
Right.
And I'm going to say this, somebody going to get mad, but there are a lot of programs and a lot of things for Black men in education, and I love that. We need more Black men in education. I believe that. But if we make up predominantly the most people, has anyone thought of us to say, let's do something for Black women who are in front of these kids every day? Why aren't we getting leadership roles? Why are our voices being silenced? Why when we get into these spaces, they marginalize us and pretend like, our experiences don't matter. So I know somebody gonna say something about that, but it just doesn't. It was common sense to me.
Well, look, let's make some more people mad. Okay, look, the Department of Labor says that the woman that leads her household, and a lot of our teachers do, is that they need to be making a minimum of $35,000 a year and more just to keep herself out of poverty. That doesn't say that $35,000 a year makes her whole or changes her quality of life or improves her family. It just says that keeps her out of poverty, from being poor. Okay, so what we know that most teachers are not even making $35,000 a year. And I'm going to make one more connection to people, because this is getting pretty ridiculous here in the state of Mississippi when we keep having this fight about wages and what we need to pay teachers. If the average person who works for a private company, if they put in the number of hours that teachers do you think they would put up with the type of salaries and pay that our teachers are getting? No way. They wouldn't last a day. We'd be seeing some EEOC cases all over the places, okay? So we know that we have to increase the wages of teachers, not only because it's the most important job that we can have or that can be part of our community, but it's essential for women of color. It's essential for women. Women need to be making a certain, let's just say, just look at from standpoint is that woman needs to be making more money just to improve her quality of life and make sure that she is economically secure. So we need to increase those wages to match those jobs. Even when we talk about equal pay, teachers need to be making a certain amount of money in order to be able to sustain themselves, and then to be able to be productive teachers, to be able to touch and impact our most precious asset.
But Ms. Woolen,
yeah,
I'm gonna say this. We having a great conversation. That's why I talk about policy so much, because they made it so here, educators can't protest. You can't even. We can't do that here, but they can do it in Chicago. When they were going through the COVID situation and they wanted the teachers to go back to school into those environments, they said, we're not doing that. And they formed a protest in California, when they wanted certain wages, they make it so in Mississippi, we can't do certain things.
And that's taking somebody's actual right away. When we look at the giving our voice and protesting and our concern, that's an American. You think that's an American right?
Yeah.
And then
we can't stage a walkout. We can't do that. We can't do those things.
Right.
And it's just so sad. Like you said, they're literally taking our voice away from us. So, we're just in this, we're just in a bind. We can't even speak for ourselves, and that's by design. Even my research, I'm just learning so much, and sometimes it makes me depressed because I learned in the 80s, education reform came in the 80s. I'm not gonna say they purposely did, but they left out HBCUs from the table. And HBCUs were producing the Black teachers. So some governors and some more people got together and they made it so teachers they wanted a better quality of life for people. So I don't see the connection, how better quality of life goes with this, but they made it so teachers would have to take a standardized test to become licensed.
Wow.
And those tests are biased towards Black people anyways. And because of that, HBCUs had to kind of scramble to help their students pass that test. So what they did was some HBCUs created, these pre-tests so their students can get into the program so they can stay accredited. Because if you're not producing, they're not passing the test, you can't keep your accreditation. And so that caused us to have less and less Black teachers. They didn't even have us at the table when they were deciding and making those decisions. And later on, down the line, they apologized for that. But that's all by design. It's all by design. And that's why I'm talking about policy so much. We have to get into those spaces. They are creating laws. They're doing all of these things to make it hard for us to be in the field. When it comes to money, they're making it difficult for us to even want to do it. And so this goes back years and years and years. of, just creating things to make it difficult for us. And I'm not going to say I did it on purpose, but if you have HBCUs across the country, we produce Black teachers, right. And then you implement this thing and you don't tell us, we're not involved in the conversation. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we can't produce the teachers that we were producing. Mm-hmm. Then where does that leave us? And so I just want people to be aware, I just try to push out information. People can know, and like, this is not by happenstance.
And that's the thing about policy is that we can't wait to be on the back end to start voicing our concerns. We have to do it on the front end, and it has to be a 365-day-a-year job. We can't wait till the legislative session happen and go with our picket signs and stuff like that, and they've already made a decision. We out there kicking up dust. We need to make sure that we get in these committees. We need to get together as a community, and like you said, talk to teachers, find out, talk to our leaders one-on-one, make sure that our lobbyists, that they're connecting with us, kicking the information with us, and where are the little places that we can make a difference, as you stated. Those are the kind of things we need to look at. Where we need to make sure that we are connecting the dots for people, for our community. This is a wonderful conversation, but I want to try to get two more things in before we have to close. I want to, if you were talking to young people right now, because we talked about, a lot of young people are not even getting into the this arena anymore. They're saying, I want more money. I don't want to spend the time and investment in it because it just too stressful, whatever the situation is. So what would you say to young people who are thinking about where they want to go? They may be interested in education, interested in teaching, but they're kind of on the fence right now on where they want to go, especially since COVID.
It's a great question. I would say lean into your passion. If you're passionate about children, particularly if you're passionate about educating Black children in your community, I would say lean into that. Follow that, because it would take you places. It would take you, initially it may be a struggle, it may be hard, but if you follow your passion, you would never go wrong. And I can say that from experience. I followed my passion. I changed my major, said I went into education, and I think it was the best decision that I could have made. Even though I had my struggles with it, but I'm grateful for those experiences that I had. And so that's what I would say. Lean into your passion. Don't try to go after a job that's going to have the money and all that thing, because you probably won't be happy. Right. But if you follow your passion and lean into your passion can take you places. Your passion can, open doors for you because you're knowledgeable about it, because you love it, because the people can see it coming from you. And that's what I would say. Because, for example, just when I went to Columbia, people could see that I was passionate about Mississippi. I was passionate about my state. And because of that, they frequently asked me to come and talk to students. They asked me to even be, come and be an instructional assistant, at an Ivy League institution. And that's because they saw that I'm leaning into that. I'm passionate about what I talk about because I love what I do. And so that's what I would say. Even University of Mississippi, they gave me a partial, like a half of a scholarship, because they see that I'm passionate about I told them in my interview, I want to study Black women in education. And I said that. Yeah. And that was a risk. Yeah. But I was telling them the truth. And because of that, they said, okay, and we're going to give you this money because I'm leaning into my passion. And I'm not, changing that for anybody. I'm not trying to change for anyone. I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not trying to, trying to water down what I believe and what I think. No, this is what my passion is. This is what I believe. That's what I'm leaning into. And, I'm sticking to that, whether you like it or not. You want me to come to this school or not? Okay, I'll go find somewhere else to go to my job, And so, that's what I would say. Lean into your passion, and it will open doors for you.
Well, my final question is: we have all have gotten a new awareness of education, teachers, since COVID, firsthand awareness. How do you think that awareness is going to impact the relationship with teachers moving forward, and even the role of teachers moving forward as we begin to get beyond COVID?
What I'm afraid of is that I think two things. I think COVID revealed the discrepancies and the gap between urban and rural schools and affluent communities. They didn't have the internet. Students didn't have devices because the school just couldn't afford to get, they couldn't be one-to-one. They couldn't afford to give every student a laptop. They couldn't afford in a budget to give every student, these things like other districts could. So those districts could just keep on going, every student has a laptop anyway. Let's go. Most school districts, I'm not going to say most, but our rural and urban school pockets in Mississippi, they couldn't do that. And so I think that exposed some things that we need to work on, and the discrepancies between, urban and rural pockets and affluent, and I'm not going to say affluent, but just, regular school districts who just have what they need, the resources that they need. I would say also that I'm afraid, I just hope that we don't devalue teachers because of the technology part. Because there is something very powerful standing in front of a group of 20-something, 8-year-olds and being able to pour into them. That connection is invaluable, in my opinion. So I hope we don't move away from that. And also, I think for years to come, we're going to see, and I'm afraid to say, we're going to see the impact that COVID had for years to come on our students, especially our Black and brown students, because most of them spent a year without school because they didn't have a device, because the district couldn't provide them a device until mid-school year, or they didn't have the internet in some rural communities. They didn't have the internet. They had to go and sit at a parking lot to get Wi-Fi.
Right.
So we're going to see the impact of this for years to come. I think some research is already coming out about what things that we're going to see. And so I just don't want us to devalue the face-to-face with educators and the students. And I hope people see the value of educators and pay educators what they need to be paid. Yeah. If you can sit at home with your child and have your child sit in front of a screen for an hour and a half, then imagine doing that with 20-something 5-year-olds and having to keep their attention.
And with all different learning styles, even here
different learning styles.
Yeah, even at DSC, when in the midst of pandemic, because we had the issues with, we wanted to limit the number of people who were in our building, our CDL training course, we started doing a hybrid model where we had laptops where they could come in and they could do some of the work by videos. Therefore, when they got back at home at night, they could also pick up at home and log in and do some of their stuff there, and then they would do classroom. Well, we thought, okay, everybody's on the internet now. That's what is going to be preferred. But we start having real challenges because we even had adults who came in who had learning issues around comprehension, regarding reading, and we had to tweak that. After we got a little bit beyond COVID, we had to start making a lot of our work around in the classroom, and and a lot of our learners were visual learners, and so we had to draw the truck on the board, and how you back, and all that kind of stuff, and trying to comprehend that through either a video or either some type of audio. Just was not conducive to our classroom. So I just think this technology thing, yes, it's convenient, and for some of the parents who can do it, it might be successful, but on the larger scale, I agree with you. I don't think it's a good thing. I think our kids need to connect with our leaders and our teachers, and so we need to continue to support. Well, Deidre, look, we're going to have a part 2 for this conversation and a part 3. And this has been amazing. Look, our comment section has blown up. You all had so many. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. And we didn't even do too much PR pushing this out. And even though we're on a day and having this conversation on a Friday, which the Working Woman Report is always on Wednesdays from 12 to 1. So next week now, don't you forget, next week we'll be back at Wednesday from 12 to 1. So don't show up on next Friday and say, where is Working Woman Report? I thought they were here on Fridays. So this is just a rare occasion, but we thank you all so much. All of you all just were sitting in for our conversation today. I hope this has been a great lunch hour for you and a very informative hour for you. Want to remind you to share this clip with all your friends. I mean, if you missed the programming, any of our shows, you can go back to Women for Progress page, go to videos, and share any of those videos and conversations that we have there. It's a great way to share. One of the goals of Women for Progress is to inform and educate. As a matter of fact, one of probably our major things that we do is inform and educate, whether it's through our radio program or our forums or our lunch and learns, or when we get together as women, our roundtable discussions, when we talk to our civic leaders. It's all about sharing information to help us make good decisions for ourselves and be able to share and help uplift our communities and our families and our loved ones. So make sure you share that information. I want you to like our page. Make sure you like our page. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on all of those particular types of platforms. And always, you can go to our website at womenforprogress.net and connect with us. If you are a woman and you're interested in a vehicle for community service, we invite you to join Women for Progress by going to our page at womenforprogress.net on our website and click the tab Join, and there's information there how you connect with us. If you want to join a conversation on our programs, you want to have a topic you want to talk about, reach out to our executive producer at jsbrown94@gmail.com, jsbrown94@gmail.com, or email us at mail, @womenforprogress.net, and give us a call at 601-918-5137, 601-918-5137, and we'd be glad to have you on our program and to talk about issues that impact our communities or your business or whatever conversation that is supportive of our community. Deirdre, you have just been fantastic. Now, finally, before we close, how do we support and engage with women educators of color?
Well, hopefully, I want to do a conference 2022 when I trying to get my life together with my doctoral program and everything else that I'm doing. And so that's going to be coming up, and I just need support because the last time I did it was with the Department of Education. But, this time I don't think I'm going to be able to have those resources. And so when I put out, a donate button or things like that, or I'm going to try to find a venue and all that stuff and find people to do some of the sessions and all of that. So when I post those things, please reach out and help me do it because, last time I had the support of the Department of Education, Mississippi Department of Education. So this time around I won't. So that's one of the things. I'm going to need resources. I'm going to need people. I'm going to need people to do sessions and all that stuff. I'm going to need funding. So that would be really, really supportive if you guys help with that when I post all that stuff.
Well, we look forward to it. Of course, Women for Progress, we're all on board. We're ready. Just tell us what we need to do. Also, when you get that button ready, we'll share it with all of you who joined us today in our comment section. You can be part of that. If you're a leader of a women's organization, or you own your own business, you're an entrepreneur, or you're an educator, we all can contribute to this particular project and conversation, and with this very, very unique approach to empowering, training, and preparing teachers and educators of color. So we'll keep you updated on when that happens and tell you where you got to connect so we can make this a powerful and amazing experience and continue to support the work of this incredible lady, Miss Deirdre Alexander, who has grounded her feet right here in the state of Mississippi. This woman graduated from Ivy League University and has done so much, been recognized with her for her work all over this country, and could be anywhere else. But she has said, I want to stay here, right here in the state of Mississippi, where I can take off my shoes and get in the mud and stay in the Mississippi soil. So we appreciate her. We want to continue to support her wherever you see her face and where she's. Please make sure you continue to uplift her, reach out and support her. Thank you so much. This has been an exciting conversation, Deidre. Have a great summer too. I know you got a lot of things on the horizon, and we look forward to. We appreciate you to all the contributions you also give to Women for Progress, and you're such a valued asset at our organization, and we give you a pat on the back for the amazing work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Ms. Williams.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.